The president's been tweeting about this, what he calls progress on North Korea while he's on that working vacation, as it is there in Bedminster, New Jersey. And, there's been a bit of a media pylon with the president, with all these headlines out there saying he's so much for a working vacation, he's not really working at all. But is that fair? From the Washington Examiner, White House correspondent Gabby Morrongiello joins us, and Fox News contributor Rachel Campos-Duffy is with us as well. I guess I'll start with you, Gabby, on that. I mean, every president takes a quote-unquote working vacation, right? I mean, is this president really any different? I mean, it's not the type of job that even if you go to, say, Hawaii or Martha's Vineyard, that all of a sudden the job leaves you, right?
No, absolutely not. I mean, every president before Donald Trump and now himself is, in constant contact with his chief of staff, with members of his cabinet, taking meetings, holding briefings. This is a working vacation. It's not as though he's just out on the golf course, completely ignoring the crises that the United States faces right now. In fact, he's holding a briefing later this afternoon with Secretary Price at Health and Human Services to discuss the nation's opioid epidemic. And so, we do know that he's getting work done. He's consulting with his Secretary of State, working with his Chief of Staff and several other advisors to determine what to do to handle North Korea's aggression. And it's certainly not, a vacation in the simplest terms.
I think what's different about this president, Rachel, is his morning habits. And it's whether it's on vacation or he's at the White House. I mean, he watches television. It's pretty obvious that he does. And then he makes comments about what he sees on TV. There was the back and forth with Senator Blumenthal yesterday, and that, to me, is what leads to some of these headlines where people say, all he's doing is tweeting, and he's not really working. What do you say?
Well, not fair. I'm sure he did tweet on that, and he's somebody who likes to speak his mind. But let's be clear. I mean, this is a billionaire businessman. He has been working on vacation for a long time. This isn't a, community organizer president who maybe knows how to relax a little bit more. He's always working, and he's not the only one working. His cabinet is working. I'm here in rural Wisconsin last week. Secretary Perdue was here in our town talking about farm issues, talking about modernizing our infrastructure with rural broadband. You see what Nikki Haley is doing. I think the media is really giving him a bum rap. I mean, even if you look at the war on ISIS, one of the most important issues we have, we're seeing dramatic advances on ISIS, more in 6 months than we probably saw in 8 years of a president who said it was a JV team. So I think the media is just not being fair on this one.
No, I would wonder if there's going to be more focus, though, in the coming weeks. I mean, that is something we heard a lot about when John Kelly took over as the chief of staff and Reince Priebus was leaving. What do you think of that, Gabby, that the Kelly era was going to have a president that doesn't stop tweeting necessarily? I mean, Neil's talked about this a little bit too. That doesn't stop tweeting necessarily, knows that that's a good weapon, whether it's in the morning, in the afternoon, or whenever it is. But he's focused on what he wants to get done. Maybe today it's North Korea, or maybe next week it's tax reform, whatever it is. But he's not getting off on a tangent and going back and forth with some senator. Is that fair?
Well, look, I mean, there was a lot of information put out there when President Trump fired Reince Priebus and hired John Kelly as his chief of staff about the influence and the impact that Kelly would have on the president's Twitter habits. A lot of people said, oh, he's going to be able to regulate them, to rein in the president on Twitter, when in fact, sources in the White House say that was never the goal of Kelly. His primary goal was to ensure that the tension between staff in the White House is addressed and that the president isn't being fed misinformation. But he's not there to, monitor and stand over the shoulder of the president every single time he decides to tweet something. And so I think that was, kind of created this misconception to begin with. I do think that Kelly is trying to emphasize the work that the president is doing to address international crises, to work with members of Congress on legislative items that are coming up, like tax reform, like the debt ceiling and a budget bill. And so I think that will be the focus. And, going back to Rachel's point earlier, President Trump has even mentioned long before he ran for president that he has never been a fan of taking vacations, of putting down his phone.
Right. That's another reason people are hitting him hard now. They're like, oh, you always said you didn't want to take a vacation. Now you're,
right.
Yeah, right. So.
just something to know.
All right. What about that point, though, Rachel, about focus? About, say, next week would be a decent time, or later this week, to really hit, while you're on the working vacation, tax reform, say, and set the parameters of the debate and say, you know, every day, few tweets, few statements, whatever it is, where you're controlling your message. You're not getting off message.
Sure. I mean, I think there's nothing wrong with Kelly or anyone else on his staff advising him to be a little more focused on his Twitter. But let's be clear. One, the president speaks his mind. He's authentic. People like that, and it connects him to the people. The folks who really want him to give up the Twitter is the media. The media knows that he sets the narrative with his tweets, and sometimes it's a little off message, but a lot of times it's hitting them. And when he talks about things that the media is not talking about, or that shows how unfair they are, it further undermines the credibility of the media, something, frankly, we haven't seen in a long time. They've gotten a pass, and finally there's a Republican president who's holding them to task.
No, I get it. But there's some polling, by the way, that shows that some of his fans even would like to see a little less tweeting and a little more focused tweeting. But Gabby and Rachel, thanks to both of you. We appreciate it.